I knew by going in to watch Jurassic World Rebirth at my local AMC that it would not be as good as the Lost World Jurassic Park, and I was right, it was not. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't a bad movie, because there were certainly a lot of points to the movie that were a lot more enjoyable than Jurassic World Dominion, which unpopular opinion, but I kind of like Dominion just because, it had like an interesting story. It wasn't the best story. It was mostly about bugs that were trying to eat a bunch of people's crops that were about to kill the planet. And it's up to Dr. Alan Grant and Owen and Grady and whatever to stop them. And it eventually leads into this epic showdown between a Giganotosaurus and, the Therizinosaurus and T-Rex. And along the way, it's actually kind of okay, but I mean, it's it's just an interesting movie, okay? I'm not saying it wasn't good or bad. I mean, I love all Jurassic movies, whether they're good or bad, and I mean, I know everyone hated on Dominion. I also hate a lot of aspects to it, but also there were a lot of elements to it that I thought were enjoyable. Mostly the dinosaurs, but, the same thing can be said for Jurassic World Rebirth. But immediately the first thing that I found confusing about the movie is, with every Jurassic movie, usually the title of the movie will mean something. So with Lost World, it was called Lost World because it's about a lost world of dinosaurs. With Jurassic Park 3, it was just the third film. And then with Jurassic World, it's, about basically the reopening, the rebranding of the original park, so that also made sense. Fallen Kingdom's title made sense because it was the fall of the prehistoric kingdom, basically. Even Dominion's title made sense because it was about dinosaurs basically taking over the planet. And Rebirth's title doesn't make any sense to me. The only thing that I can kind of scrub out of this is that it's the rebirth of the franchise, which there are 2 more films on the way. I just want to make that clear. They made that very clear from the start when they were making Rebirth, is that there's going to be a new trilogy. So this one's called Jurassic World Rebirth. Hopefully, the next 2 ones will make a lot more sense. But what Rebirth does is very similar to what Dominion does. And for the first time in my life, I actually agree with IGN on their review. They gave it a 5 out of 10. It was neither good nor bad. It was just kind of down the middle, which is kind of how I felt about it when I went and saw it on the early access showing on Wednesday. It's currently Monday right now. I already went and saw it a second time, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but I watched it early access on last Wednesday, so if you were able to watch Rebirth on July 2nd, then you would have been able to get these really bitchin' ID passes that you could have worn into the theater. I got one, fortunately. I thought they weren't going to do them, or they would have been sold out, because for whatever reason, they decided to release Rebirth 2 days earlier, or a day earlier. I have no idea. AMC's weird that way, but luckily I got myself a VIP pass, basically. So that was pretty cool. That was probably the highlight of my evening, because the rest of the time I watched it in early access, I was just sort of like, what the hell is this movie? But I watched it a second time at another theater, and I actually understand this movie more and more every time I watch it. Because one of the things that this movie tries to do is it tries to basically restart the franchise, because they make it very clear in the first 10 minutes of the movie that basically all the dinosaurs, not all of them, but most of them die because of the way how the world is now, and how there's a lot of pollution in the air, there's not enough oxygen, it's not as hot, there's not enough oxygen. Basically, the biggest thing is that it's not tropical, which is what, they prefer, which is why in every image and video we've ever seen of old pictures and videos of dinosaurs, they're always depicted in a tropical environment. And the only place that they can survive is the equator, basically, which is where, most of the franchise has taken place. So in Isla Nublar, Isla Sorna, if you watched Camp Cretaceous, then you would have seen it on Manticore Island, and now on this island that I forgot the name of, but it's in the island chain of Barbados or something like that. But basically, it makes more sense. It just made more sense to me when I watched it a second time. One of the things that I think a lot of people tend to forget with Rebirth is that it's called Jurassic World, and with the past 3 world films we've seen, there's always been some kind of giant epic dino fight at the very end. There isn't with this movie. And because the screenwriter David Koepp wrote the first 2 films, and there was no giant epic dino fight in either of those 2 films. You could argue that, you had the Velociraptors versus the T-Rex in the first Jurassic Park, but that was very brief, and it was within the last 5 minutes of the film. So that's kind of out. And there was no giant epic dino fight in The Lost World either. It was just, the T-Rexes. It was just a T-Rex walking on land, and eventually it makes it back to the boat and then it shifts off back to Isla Sorna. So that's why I feel like everyone is forgetting about, is because this isn't really a Jurassic World film. This is a Jurassic Park film. This is basically Jurassic Park 7/4, depending on if you want to count the Jurassic World films. So they make it very clear that the dinosaurs don't survive, and we're basically introduced to Scarlett Johansson's character, Zora Bennett, and then the rich billionaire guy, I forgot his name, but he's the bad guy. I think everyone kind of knew that from just by watching the trailers. I did, and I was right, so there's that. But, the story's pretty simple. It's about this rich billionaire guy who recruits Zora Bennett to go and get DNA from the 3 largest dinosaurs on the planet, currently on the planet. One of them being the Mosasaurus, the other one being the Quetzalcoatlus, and the other one being the Titanosaurus. Basically, all 3 biomes: Earth, water, and sky. And the reason why they need them, the reason why they need their DNA is because their hearts are the largest, and also they have like the largest heart muscles or something like that. I forgot. But they basically have their DNA is so special because basically of all the pharmaceutical companies that, want a solution to cure cancer and Alzheimer's and all that. And one of the things that Dr. Henry Loomis makes clear to Zora Bennett is that they shouldn't be doing this for just one company. It should be for everyone to have, so that way all the companies are able to, I guess, manufacture repellents for cancer and stuff like that. That's kind of what Jurassic World Dominion did. I didn't really understand it. I still don't. I don't have that scientific mind on me to understand how a dinosaur DNA can cure cancer. They did explain it in this movie, so I forgot how it was said, but they basically said that because Titanosaurus and Mosasaurus and Quetzalcoatlus have the biggest hearts, basically, that their DNA is so strong because their hearts are so strong, and by studying their DNA they can decipher how they can cure humans, because apparently they also said that these creatures can live up to hundreds of years old. So there's that. But moving on, we're introduced to this family, which is the most useless, freaking just blank, no character development at all family I've ever seen in any movie. There is a bit of development from the daughter's boyfriend, but he's kind of a jackass throughout the movie, so he keeps on making these little quippy, quotes throughout the movie. There's even this, right after he saves the father's daughter, because the father doesn't like him, then at one point the father and boyfriend try to have this manly conversation, and he's saying, she's alive because of you. I thank you for it. And then the boyfriend's like, yeah, well, I gotta go take a piss. It's just so blank. I didn't like it one bit. But at least it was entertaining, because in one scene, and this pisses me off, when he goes down to take his piss down by the river, actually pulling a Chris Farley moment here, going to take his piss down by the river, there's a dinosaur, and it's the only time we ever see this dinosaur in this entire movie. And I'll just say it's a raptor. It's a raptor. Behind him is 2 velociraptors, and the one closest to him is kind of stalking up to him, doesn't really know what he is, so he's kind of checking him out. And he's completely unaware, by the way. He is completely unaware that there is a velociraptor right behind him. And I shit you not, the one time we get to see the velociraptor in this movie is the dumbest, quickest, most disrespectful way I've ever seen a raptor go out. Right when the raptor is about to attack him, this Mutodon comes right out of the sky, pounces on the raptor, and it's right when the raptor is in midair about to kill the boyfriend, and the Mutodon just mauls this raptor. It's just the most disrespectful death scene I've ever seen, because a second later, the Mutodon, because it has wings, it picks up the raptor and then just flies off with it, and then you see this dangling raptor body stuck to its claws, and then he looks back to see this Mutodon fly off with the raptor, and then he turns back around and just dumps his trousers. He just spills his piss everywhere into the river. It's It's just the most disrespectful scene in my opinion, in this movie. The one time we get to see an absolutely bitchin' design of a velociraptor, which harkens back to the Jurassic Park 3 raptor, and it's the only time we ever see it, and it's immediately killed off by one of these stupid hybrid-looking Rodan things. It's just, it's stupid. They get all the DNA from all the other creatures. Yeah, they basically all get to, like, this human village there. Everything's geothermal power, so it's still all operating. Kind of like how it was in the Lost World, another parallel there in the worker village. So they get there, and everything turns on. The Mutadons find them. Oh, and there's also, I forgot to mention, too, before any of this happens, there is also that really cool river scene with the T-Rex. That was ripped straight out of the novel. Absolute perfection. I loved it. So, one of the issues that I had with this movie is the way how the Distortus Rex is executed. Not like death-wise, but the way how it operates. And because everything's shut down, everything's thrashed to hell, you'd think that this thing was just, like, eloping about in, like, you know, the island and stuff, because it's so massive, and literally within like the first 5 minutes of the movie, it breaks out. But that's not the case, because the next time we see this thing is in its cage, and then it literally, as a helicopter is coming in to, you know, save them and everything, it's attracted to the spotlight from the helicopter, and then it just so easily hops. Well, it doesn't even hop; it just walks out of its cage. Like, I have so many issues with how big this thing is, because it makes no sense. Because there's several scenes where, like, this thing is like the size of a T-Rex, just on all fours, but then there's another scene where the D-Rex is like a fucking kaiju. It's like, it grabs the helicopter. I think they show this off in the trailer, I'm not too sure, but we literally see this enormous mutated T-Rex just fucking grab a helicopter out of the sky, and the helicopter is like 40 feet long, mind you, and it's got it in its mouth, and it's just crushing it like it's a toy. Like, there's so many issues I have with the way how the scaling works for this thing. It just makes no sense. Because then there's a bunch of other scenes where we see it, you know, like hunting the humans. And by the way, this thing is fucking awful at hunting. It's like really ridiculously slow, because it's only attracted to the light, and the only kill it ever makes is one of the humans. It kills the crazy rich guy. I think we all kind of knew that this guy was going to be eaten, because he just had that vibe. He's basically like the modern day John Hammond from the books. But he kills him, and that's like the only kill that this thing makes. Because one of the things that we're all kind of expecting would happen is Mahershala Ali's character, Duncan Kincaid, I think his name is, or Kincaid, I'm not too sure, but Duncan, right before I even get any further, Duncan is probably the only character with even an iota of common sense throughout this movie, because everyone else is just sort of in it for the money, and then Duncan's like the Vin Diesel of this movie. All he cares about is his family, because he lost his son, and as a result of that, you know, he and his wife divorced, because he explains it to Zora early on in the movie that anytime they looked at each other, they just saw their son, so they decided to just, you know, go about it their separate ways, because it was just making them depressed. So he's like the only character with even a microbe of common sense in this movie. We're all kind of expecting him to die, right? In like the last few minutes of the movie, because he's got the flare and he's leading the D-Rex away from the humans. So we all think that he's gonna die, right? Because there's just no way he's gonna be able to survive that thing. And yet somehow he survived. He survived the D-Rex. How? I have no idea, because this thing's a carnivore. It was trying to kill him. It even tried to grab him, because that was one of this Rancor basically tried to do to him earlier. It reached out to him and tried to grab him, and it missed, and he was able to get away. And somehow he was able to survive and get away from an almost 50-foot monster usually when something like that happens, I knew that was going to happen because they did this with Transformers Rise of the Beasts. When Beak gets stabbed by Scourge in the trailers, we're all kind of thinking, oh no, Bee's going to die, but that's like the most predictable thing to happen because then he survives in the movie. And it's the same story with Duncan. Because we all see him, leading the Distortus Rex away, we're all thinking, oh, he's gonna die and stuff. But no, I knew it. I think everyone else knew it. The question is, how? Because that thing is so massive, and yeah, it is attracted to the light, but even then, it saw the bad guy after it saw the light. So you would think that it would go after him and not the light. Because that was even the same thing that happened with Dr. Malcolm in Jurassic Park. When Dr. Grant was waving the flare around, he stood completely still, and then he tossed the flare, and then Rexy went after it. The difference was with Dr. Malcolm, he was waving the flare and then running around, and then Rexy noticed he was a human, so it wasn't even drawn to the flare anymore. It was drawn. She was drawn to him, so it tried to eat Dr. Malcolm. And somehow, this same thing happens with Duncan. Somehow, he survives with the flare in his hand, and he heroically roars out at the D-Rex, and somehow he survives. I just don't understand that in the slightest. I like that he survives. I truly do, but I would have preferred if he died, because it would have just made a lot more sense, made the movie a lot more meaningful, and it probably would have made a lot more sense. And the last thing that doesn't make sense in this movie, the family survives, Zora survives, Dr. Loomis survives, Duncan survives. They basically all survive, and they're leaving the island on what is the most vulnerable piece of equipment I think is in the world, because they're not even driving a pontoon boat. It's like this sort of balloon hull looking thing, and it's like one of those plastic boats that has like an outboard motor at the back of it. It's like one of those I don't know what it is, but it's not a pontoon boat. It's like this balloon type boat that it has two motors at the back of it. And the problem I have with it is that A, it's really small, and B, they were just out on the water the previous day being attacked by five Spinosauruses. There were 5 of them and a Mosasaur. Then the Mosasaurs could easily just bite them and just chomp. It made no sense. So that's sort of my complaints of the movie, is that just didn't make any sense. That was confusing. Some aspects to the film that I really liked were that the horror element was added into this big time. And I know that the whole thing with Steven Spielberg when he was making Jurassic Park and Lost World was that he didn't want them to be horror monster movies, that these were just animals. And the horror trend, monster trend of Jurassic Park kind of started with Jurassic Park 3 with the Spinosaurus, but I think even then the Spinosaurus can be justified because it was, brutalized by humans. It hates humans, so it goes after it. That makes sense. The Indominus Rex was a straight up monster. It just killed for sport. And the Indoraptor, yeah, that was a straight up monster because it full on played death and was smiling with the hunter that we've seen that we all hated throughout the movie. It smiles at him and then eats him and all that. But then you got the Giganotosaurus. The Giganotosaurus is just the most innocent thing in Jurassic World Dominion because it does nothing. It kills no one. The only thing it does kill is a bug. And because of that horrible sin it made, it is just gourded by the Therizinosaurus. I honestly felt so bad for it. I honestly feel so bad for the Giganotosaurus now because it did nothing. It just existed. And with the Distortus Rex, Gareth Edwards, I think, mentioned that, we're supposed to feel bad for the D-Rex. And in a way, I was feeling bad for it because it's a hybrid. It's, this monstrous creation. And at the same time, I don't feel bad because it does kill people. It does kill the bad guy. It does kill a human. And it also does attack and destroy a helicopter also, I should mention that. But apart from that, I honestly don't really know what Gareth was talking about. I really just feel like this movie was just an excuse for Gareth to put his Godzilla concept artwork onto the big screen, because the Distortus Rex is literally just altered Muto artwork from, like, the movie, and it literally just looks like the Muto Prime, but with a Rancor head. The things that I actually do like about this movie are that it does tell a much more reasonable, compelling story, and it doesn't tell a lame story. I think that what everyone kind of dissed on Jurassic World Dominion was that everyone understood. I mean, this is my take, okay? I understood the story, but it was lame. The fact that, you know, the entire movie revolved around these prehistoric locusts, that's lame. But the story itself made sense, so I will grant Dominion that. And what this movie does different is that it tells a reasonable and understandable story, and that makes it miles better than Dominion. I think this movie makes a lot more sense than Dominion ever did. It's really enjoyable. I also was in the same boat as everyone else when, like, the first time I watched it, I was like, what the hell are we doing here, Gareth? But I watched it a second time, and it made a lot more sense to me the more I watched it. And I really do hope everyone gives it a chance, because this is actually a movie you need to see. This is a movie, I think you can probably watch it once and say, yeah, okay, I've seen it. But for me, at least, Rebirth is what I like to call a filler film, where it's just a movie that fills in a gap for the next film, so that we're not bored and we have something to watch. Obviously, Rebirth is just the rebirth of the brand and the toy market, basically. I do think that this movie is pretty enjoyable if you give it a chance, and you know, it doesn't tell the best story in the world, but it certainly wasn't as bad as Dominions. So I definitely think you should give this movie a chance. Watch it maybe once or twice, at least once. You need to watch this movie at least once, because I think that this movie is a hell of a lot better than Dominion and, in my opinion, Fallen Kingdom. And that's really all I can say about this movie. It was a good movie. I don't think it's better than The Lost World. The Lost World still rocks, in my opinion. But I'm hoping that the next two films, Jurassic World 8 and Jurassic World 9, will actually tell a decent story and answer some questions for us. Because I'm definitely looking forward to knowing why everything kind of happened in the first place, and what's going to happen with the D-Rex, and hopefully we'll get to see the Spinosaurus from Jurassic Park 3 in those two films. Hopefully Spiney's not dead from Jurassic Park 3. He's probably still kicking around the equator, still living. But yeah, it is a fun movie, and I think you should watch this at least once. That's about it. Thank you for watching.